Kevin never saw the car until it was directly in front of him. He was heading north on Peachtree Industrial. The driver of a silver sedan made a left turn across traffic without signaling and without looking. Kevin had maybe half a second to react. He grabbed the brakes and put the bike down. He slid across the pavement, both lanes of traffic, and stopped at the curb. His right leg was broken. His gear had kept his arms and upper body intact. But lying on the pavement, waiting for an ambulance, Kevin did something that seemed logical at the time and completely understandable, given that he was scared and in pain. He called the other driver's insurance company to report the accident. He thought he was being responsible. What he did not know was that call, made before he knew exactly the extent of his injuries, before any documentation had been gathered, before he had any legal guidance, that it would cost him significantly more than what he had calculated in those first moments. Hi, I'm Ted Spaulding. I'm a personal injury attorney here in Atlanta, and I've been handling motorcycle cases for over 20 years now. And what happened to Kevin is something that I see consistently. And it's not because motorcyclists are careless. It's because nobody tells them what the first 24 hours actually require in terms of protecting their rights. The decisions you make in the hours immediately after a motorcycle crash in Georgia will shape everything that follows. Let me walk you through exactly what to do step by step. First, before I do, let me address something in Georgia that's unique to motorcycle cases that standard car accident cases never have to worry about, and that's bias. In Georgia, when a motorcycle accident case is presented to a jury, jurors bring assumptions. They assume the rider was speeding. They assume the rider was weaving. They assume that the motorcyclist had simply been more careful. The accident probably wouldn't have happened. And they assume that the motorcyclist took the risk. These assumptions are frequently completely false, but they are presented in the room and insurance adjusters know it. They count on it. They use those assumptions to assign fault to riders, even when the car driver made the obvious and clear mistake, as happened in Kevin's case. And even when the police officer is saying the other driver is 100% at fault, the insurance company oftentimes will still blame the motorcyclist because of this underlying bias. This means your documentation at the scene is not just important, it is essential in the way that goes well beyond the standard car accident case, because you are going to need evidence that overcomes a disadvantage you walk in with before you even say a word as a motorcyclist. Here is what to do at the scene. If you are physically able, photograph everything. And do that before anything moves. Every vehicle in its exact position on the road, every skid mark, including the ones your tires left, every piece of debris from the wreck, the traffic signal, both ways, maybe all four ways, depending on what you're dealing with. The sight lines from both directions, which will show whether the driver had a clear view of you before making the turn. Obviously, the damage to the car that hit you, the damage to your motorcycle, including where on the bike the impact was centered. You want to make sure you capture that. Photographs of all of your injuries from multiple angles. You want all of the damage photographs from multiple angles, wide shots, close shots. Any of your gear that has any scrape marks. If you've got a GoPro camera, if you've got a recording of the wreck from your vantage point, don't stop that recording, keep going with it, and obviously don't erase anything. You want to gather all of this. Next, that often is missed, is get witness information. Please, if bystanders stop, you want to get their information. If there's actual witnesses to the wreck, you want to get all of their information. You do not want to assume the police are going to cover all of that in their report. They oftentimes don't. Neutral witnesses in motorcycle cases carry enormous weight, so much more so than in your normal car wreck case, because they can help counter the bias that we were describing earlier. A third party who watched and says clearly that the car turned in front and there was nothing the motorcyclist could do carries a ton of weight and helps fight against that bias that we were talking about. Next, you want to call the police, obviously. Don't let the other driver suggest that you can handle it without police. You need an official response because, again, you know with the bias, the insurance company, regardless of what the police say, are more likely to still point the finger at you to some extent than they otherwise would if it wasn't a motorcycle wreck. When the officer arrives, make sure they take your statement. They get the statement from the other driver and any witnesses. You want to make sure. And then when you get the report, you want to read it very, very carefully. Now, if you're a motorcycle rider, you obviously know that Georgia law requires motorcycle endorsements on your license to operate a motorcycle. If you have that endorsement, make sure your attorney knows it. If there is any question about licensing, tell your attorney privately and immediately. Insurance companies will investigate, and you want no surprises. You don't want your lawyer to be surprised at all. Now let's talk about what not to do. Don't call the other driver's insurance company from the scene or within the first 24 hours. When you make that call immediately after the crash, you're scared, you're in pain, you're running on adrenaline, and your thinking is not clear. You don't know the legal implications of your words. You might say your pain is not that bad because you're in shock and you can't feel it. Maybe you don't have broken bones like Kevin did. You might say you didn't see it coming or you did see it coming, which gets documented as evidence. And then based off of the scene and everything else, they'll try to use that against you to say that somehow you're at fault. Remember, everything you say in that recorded statement is recorded. It'll be evaluated and used against you when it can. Also know you're not legally obligated to give a recorded statement to the at-fault party's insurance. So why would you do it? My advice is always don't do it. Certainly not until you talk to an attorney, and most likely that advice from the attorney is you're not doing a recorded statement. Now, the next thing is don't move your motorcycle without documenting its position first. Oftentimes, guys and gals want to immediately, if they're not real injured, pick up their bike, get it out off the road, those sorts of things. The resting position is important. Leave it where it is. Make sure it's fully documented without being picked up, not put up on its stand. Leave it where it is. In most cases, if you can, you want to leave it the exact way it was until the police come and do their full investigation. Because if you don't and you move it, once it's moved, that information's gone exactly where the bike was, and it's really hard to recreate it. Now, beyond the recorded statement from earlier, the other is don't give a recorded detailed statement to any insurance company without speaking to your attorney first. You do legally need to give a recorded statement if asked for by your insurance company, but you do not want to do it until you talk to an attorney first. And certainly if you're going to hire an attorney, let your attorney handle when that conversation happens. With your own insurance, you would think, basic accident information and things like that is fine. And typically it is, but you would want to limit any talk with your insurance company to the simple facts, nothing about what you could have done or not done or what you saw, any of that stuff. Leave it very basic. This applies to everything beyond basic accident notification to your own insurer. That's all you're wanting to do is just give the basic notification that you've been in a wreck and wait until you speak with an attorney. Now, medical care. Motorcycle accidents involve significant forces and significant adrenaline. Riders often feel functional when they are not. Internal injuries, traumatic brain injuries, even with a quality DOT regulated helmet, spinal injuries that have not yet produced severe pain, rib fractures. There are all possible things that can happen in these types of crashes, and you don't feel like it's catastrophic at the time. Go to the emergency room. Especially in a motorcycle wreck, go to the emergency room. Tell them you were in a motorcycle accident. Tell them about every symptom that you're feeling, including the ones that seem minor at the moment. You want to mention them. You don't want to exaggerate. That's not the point, but you want to make sure you're documenting where you're at this exact moment. Now, your gear matters medically as well. If your helmet took an impact, tell the emergency room that. Be good to bring the helmet with you to the emergency room. Helmets are designed to absorb the energy, obviously, and the helmet absorbs a significant blow oftentimes in these wrecks. And it may have protected you from the worst brain injury, but concussion symptoms may still be there, and they need to be monitored. If your jacket, gloves, boots show impact damage, photograph them and preserve them. That's the key. You want to keep that documentation, that evidence, all the way through trial so you can show the actual helmet or the actual jacket and how it was ripped up. I had one case with a boot and the back heel was torn loose, the sole from the rest of the boot. This is physical evidence of the forces involved in the crash to then help prove your injuries. Now, the next thing you want to be careful on is in the days following the accident, you want to preserve everything. Your gear, even if it's torn or damaged, the motorcycle in its post-accident condition. So if you've taken it back, it didn't go to the wrecker, all your communications with other driver, witnesses, if they're text messages, voicemails, anything, you don't want to authorize any repairs to your motorcycle until an adjuster looks at it and has inspected it, until you've taken photographs or your lawyer has taken photographs of it. You don't want to do any repairs until your attorney has cleared the repairs to be done. Now, next, you want to expect that the insurance company is going to investigate your history as a rider. They're going to ask about your endorsement. They're going to look at your record, your years of experience, any prior motorcycle wrecks you've been in, and other general categories of your riding record. You want to make sure your documentation is in order for sure. And if they make any representation to you about what they need, route that to your attorney and let your attorney handle getting them any information on your riding record. Next, you want to consider uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage. It becomes very important in motorcycle cases, and it layers differently, and you got to know that in these motorcycle cases versus when it's just a traditional four-wheel vehicle wreck. Georgia law requires or UIM, which is underinsured motorist coverage, to be offered on even motorcycle policies. If the driver who hit you has minimum coverage and your injuries are real severe, which oftentimes they are, UIM coverage becomes very, very important. So what you want to do is you want to check your policy. First, your motorcycle policy, see what the limits are, what type of coverage you have on the motorcycle. But you also want to check your four-wheel vehicle policy as well. That would apply in addition, or if you don't have motorcycle, as the only coverage. I've had scenarios where there was multiple layers of coverage in a motorcycle wreck because of all the different vehicles in the household. Now, one other thing that comes up specifically in Georgia motorcycle cases is the question of helmet use. Georgia law under OCGA section 46315 requires all motorcycle operators and passengers to wear a helmet. If you were wearing a helmet at the time of the crash, that is significant, and your attorney should document it clearly in building your case. Jurors are going to want to know if you were wearing your helmet properly or not. If you were not wearing a helmet, the insurance company will raise that as a factor, particularly if you have a head or brain injury claim. They will argue that your injuries were worsened by the absence of a helmet. This does not automatically bar your claim, but it is something your attorney needs to know up front so they can address it proactively. So helmet use is a big thing. And remember, it needs to be a DOT-approved helmet. If you have a novelty helmet, it's not going to do you any good. It's as if you weren't wearing a helmet at all. Now, the next thing that's going to be scrutinized that you need to be aware of is your lane positioning and speed at the time of the wreck. If witnesses or a traffic camera captured any part of your approach to the collision, that footage will be obtained and analyzed. This is another reason why your own documentation at the scene, photos, witness contacts, your written account matter so much in motorcycle cases. You want a factual record that reflects what actually happened, not the version the at-fault driver's insurance constructs for you. If there is video and it's helpful for you, you want to secure that video. You want your lawyer to know about it if you have an attorney. It can be very, very powerful evidence as well. Now, your rights as a motorcyclist in Georgia are equal to any other driver under the law. That's real important for the bias that we talked about earlier. You're entitled to full compensation for your injuries, your lost income, your pain and suffering, your medical expenses. But collecting what you are owed requires building your case from the moment the crash happens. So much more so in a motorcycle wreck, for all the reasons we talked about through this video, than you would in a traditional car accident. Now, if you take nothing else from this video, remember this: the first few hours after a motorcycle accident in Georgia can make or break your case. what you document, what you say, how quickly you get medical care, and legal guidance can directly affect whether you recover the compensation you deserve or not. And when the insurance company starts looking for excuses to reduce or deny responsibility, they often rely on legal arguments people do not fully understand. That is why you should watch the next video. Georgia Dog Bite Law: Why My Dog Never Bit Before Won't Protect the Owner. Now, I know it's a dog bite case. Why would I watch it as a motorcycle accident person? Well, because it explains one of the most common defenses people try to use in Georgia injury cases and why it does not automatically shield them from liability. Watch that next.